Did you know the most painful moment for a narcissist is not when they are abandoned, but when they are forced to face the truth that they themselves destroyed the only real love they ever had in their life? Carl Jung once said that the shadow hidden deep within us is the very part we refuse to acknowledge, yet it is what controls us most powerfully. And for the narcissist, that shadow is emptiness, the fear of exposure, and the inability to love with sincerity. In today's video, we will decode the narcissist's breaking point, the moment when the mask falls, when their control no longer works, and when they realize they did not lose an emotional supply, but genuine love, something they will never get back. Through the lens of Jungian analysis, we will see clearly why narcissists are not only victims of their own self-deception, but also the architects of their self-destruction, destroying the very chance to ever be authentic human beings. So what happens in their psyche when this truth finally hits? How can your silence and your letting go have the power to shatter their entire false world? And what lesson did Jung want us to take away in order to heal and step into freedom? Stay until the end of this video, because you will not only understand how the narcissist destroys love, but also discover how you, as an empath, can transform pain into strength and step out of their shadow to reclaim yourself. Part 1. The illusion of control, when the shadow reigns. There is a tragedy with the weight of myth inside the inner world of the narcissist. They believe they are controlling others, but in reality they are trapped in their own snare. Carl Jung once said, "Whatever is not made conscious will return as fate." And indeed, the control the narcissist thinks they possess is not real power at all. It is merely a reflection of their unconscious fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being forgotten, fear of facing the shadow within themselves. On the surface, they appear charming, adept at reading emotions, and skilled at using false finesse to convince others that they embody perfection. But this is not love, not empathy. It is strategy. A psychological game where the narcissist believes that if they manipulate skillfully enough, they will secure the superior position in the relationship. Yet Jung would call this an illusion of the ego, a fragile construct built only to conceal the fractures within. They employ familiar tools, calculated compliments, selective attention, sudden emotional withdrawal, all designed to disorient the other person, to make them question their own feelings. The more confused the victim becomes, the more dependent they grow, and the narcissist mistakes this dependency for victory. In truth, it is merely the expression of a soul that never feels enough. According to Jung, the shadow is the part of ourselves we do not want to see, yet it governs our behavior the most. For the narcissist, the shadow is emptiness and profound insecurity. They construct a mask of control to avoid staring into that abyss. But the paradox is this: the harder they try to control others, the more they reveal the lack of control within. And when real love enters, it is like light piercing directly into the darkness. It exposes the truth that the narcissist does not know how to connect with sincerity, only how to replay the same old power games. This is the beginning of the breaking point, because no illusion can last forever under the light of truth. Part 2. When real love touches the shadow. From the very beginning, narcissists often step into relationships with an irresistible allure. They know how to observe, how to mirror your desires, fears, and longings, until you feel as though you have found your soulmate. They can say the very words you once whispered to yourself, perform the gestures you always wished for, even share dreams that make you believe your soul has found its missing half. But as Carl Jung emphasized, what is projected outward is what has not been faced within. The narcissist does not truly see you. They are simply using you as a mirror to reinforce their own image. What we often mistake for empathy is, in fact, strategy. That reflection, what psychology calls mirroring, does not spring from love, but from the hunger for control. When the narcissist convinces you they understand your every heartbeat, it is not connection. It is their way of infiltrating the core of your emotions, the place where you are most vulnerable. And it is there that their power begins. This is the stage of love, bombing the overwhelming shower of affection. Endless compliments, intense attention, grand promises of a beautiful future. It makes you feel exalted, lifted, as though you are the most special person in the world. Yet, as Jung noted, any experience that feels too intense, too idealized, always carries the mark of the shadow. Because true love does not need extravagance to hide behind it, is steady, enduring, and does not require proof. Within that dazzling light, calculation is already at work. The narcissist is quietly laying the foundation for an unbalanced relationship. They hold the position of giver while you are placed in the role of dependent receiver. They sow in you the belief that your happiness is tied to their presence. And once you grow accustomed to the downpour of affection, their sudden silence becomes a weapon. This is no longer love, it is conditioning. Jung called such experiences projection traps. You believe you see a kindred spirit, but in reality, you are only seeing your own longing reflected back at you through their mask. And that mask will inevitably crack as time reveals the truth. The painful reality is this: genuine love, the very thing that could have nourished both souls, has been twisted into a strategy of control. Yet within this deception, a seed of awakening is planted. For sooner or later, the light of real love will shine upon the shadow they try so desperately to hide. And in that moment, it will not be you, but they who begin to tremble. Part 3. When manipulation erodes self-worth. After the dazzling beginning, once the victim has started to trust, the narcissist subtly changes the rules of the game. No longer do they pour on constant attention. Instead, they begin to plant tiny cracks in the other person's heart. Jung once emphasized, the shadow does not disappear when denied. It only seeps into the places we least expect. And for the narcissist, their shadow shows most clearly in the way they manipulate emotions to maintain their position. The endless sweetness shifts into backhanded compliments. You did well, but you know it's still not perfect. Or sudden emotional withdrawals that leave the other person stunned, unsure of what they did wrong. These are not random acts. They are strategy designed to sow self-doubt in the victim, forcing them to chase after the narcissist's approval. Jung called this process ego erosion. When the sense of self no longer stands firm, a person becomes vulnerable to being turned into someone else's puppet. And indeed, the moment someone begins asking themselves, am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? That is the moment they unconsciously hand over control to the narcissist. Gaslighting, one of their most dangerous weapons, is not merely denying reality. It is the restructuring of memory, making the victim doubt their own feelings, even their own eyes. When you no longer trust yourself, you are forced to rely on external anchors. And in this drama, the narcissist is always ready to provide the answers so long as it keeps them at the center. But the illusion is more fragile than they think. Emotional control is never true connection. It can silence someone, force compliance, but it cannot nurture love. Jung once said, there is no transformation without a prior crisis of the soul. And it is in that very crisis that the manipulated person begins to realize love cannot survive in the shadow of constant doubt. What the narcissist fails to see is this: each time they wound the other, they not only destroy trust, but also unknowingly plant a seed of awakening. Sooner or later, the one being controlled will understand that their worth does not come from anyone's validation. And when that realization dawns, the narcissist's power collapses in silence. Part 4. Love or possession. In a healthy relationship, love is built on mutual respect, where two individuals remain whole and grow together. But in the narcissist's world, love is twisted into ownership. They do not see their partner as a full human being, but as an extension of the ego they are desperately trying to protect. Carl Jung once wrote, where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, love is lacking. It is this confusion that turns love into a tool of control. For the narcissist, attachment is not companionship, it is proof of dominance. They believe that if someone truly loves them, that person must always put them first, must accept self-sacrifice, must endure sudden withdrawals of affection without question. In this distorted logic, love becomes a loyalty test, and possession is mislabeled as intimacy. Jung called this the possession of the shadow, when the false self uses every means to overshadow another's soul. The narcissist grows jealous of anything that brings you joy outside of them, a friend, a passion, even a moment of solitude. In their eyes, every drop of emotional energy must circle back to fuel the ego universe they've constructed. And when real love appears, the kind of love that is patient, pure, and non-possessive, it becomes a threat. Because such love demands sincerity, presence, and the ability to let go of power. But this is precisely what the narcissist cannot do. To love truly, they would have to remove the mask, relinquish dominance, and accept that they too are imperfect. For them, this feels like stepping into the realm of the shadow, the very place they fear most. So instead of opening their heart, they sabotage. They devalue love, turning it into a transaction. They want to be loved in submission, not in freedom. Yet the paradox is this: the tighter they grip, the faster love slips away. Love cannot survive in a space ruled by power. It can only exist where there is equality, respect, and freedom of the soul. This is where the narcissist illusion begins to crack. They believe ownership equals connection, but in truth, possession is love's enemy. And once the other person realizes this, they no longer wish to be anyone's property. They choose freedom. And when they walk away, the narcissist loses the one thing power can never buy back: real love. Part 5. When silence becomes a weapon. In genuine love, silence can be a pause, a moment to listen, to heal, for two souls to reconnect. But in the hands of a narcissist, silence becomes an obsessive tool of control. They know that inconsistency, being affectionate one day, cold and distant the next, creates confusion. And within that void, they plant anxiety. Carl Jung once said, "Where there is no consciousness, fate will decide for us." When the victim cannot understand why the affection has changed, they begin to search for the cause within themselves and unconsciously allow the narcissist to rewrite the script of their life. This silence is never random. It is calculated. The narcissist knows a sudden compliment can lift you up, while an abrupt withdrawal can cast you into despair. This push-pull game not only makes you question your worth, but also binds you to their validation. Every glance, every message, every unexpected return becomes a reward, though in truth it is nothing more than scraps of affection rationed out to preserve control. According to Jung, this is the manipulation of the shadow when the unhealed unconscious begins to dictate the relationship. The narcissist does not know how to sustain authentic intimacy, because real intimacy requires consistency and presence. Instead, they orchestrate a rhythm of love and rejection, keeping the other perpetually off balance. And the more unsteady the victim becomes, the more energy they pour into reading the narcissist's moods rather than seeing the truth clearly. The painful part is this: silence is often misinterpreted as mystery, even as a sign of love. The victim asks, "What did I do wrong? Why have they changed?" In trying to fix the unfixable, they sink deeper into the trap. Silence becomes an invisible chain, not binding with violence, but with the longing to be loved. Yet, as Jung emphasized, darkness cannot survive once it is illuminated by awareness. The moment the victim recognizes that this silence is not a sign of love, but a weapon of manipulation, awakening begins. And when they stop reacting, stop guessing, stop allowing silence to define their worth, the narcissist's entire system of control begins to crack. Part 6. Breaking point. The silent collapse. The narcissist's breaking point does not come through fiery arguments or dramatic breakups. It arrives in silence when the person they once manipulated suddenly stops reacting. Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And here, the light of truth does not shine on the victim, but directly into the narcissist's shadow. Throughout the relationship, they believed the power was in their hands. Every word, every withdrawal, every gesture was designed to steer the other's emotions. They thought that as long as the other cried, raged, or pleaded, They remained the center of the universe. But when the survivor begins the healing journey, when silence replaces all the usual reactions, the script suddenly collapses. What terrifies the narcissist is not anger, but indifference. For anger is still a form of connection, while indifference is the total withdrawal of energy. Jung called this the withdrawal of projection, when the victim no longer sees the narcissist as a source of power, but as they truly are. A wounded, empty soul incapable of love. In this moment, narcissists often lash out. They intensify their old tactics, blaming, bargaining with affection, even reviving sweet promises. But the more they try, the more they fail, because the old channels of connection no longer function. They cannot comprehend why the emotional supply that once responded so faithfully is now silent, unmoved, unreachable. This is the breaking point, the psychological collapse. When the narcissist finally realizes that control was never connection, that power built on dependency lasts only until the other finds themselves again. And when that happens, the fortress of power they spent so long constructing begins to fracture from within. Ironically, they believe themselves invincible, but in the end, they are undone by indifference. Silence is not surrender. It is the final declaration. You no longer have power in my life. And that is the one outcome the narcissist never anticipated. Part 7. The fear of being forgotten. The harshest sentence. If there is one obsession shared by all narcissists, it is the fear of being forgotten. They can endure hatred, criticism, even contempt. But indifference, total silence, is their greatest nightmare. For in their world, existence equals evoking a reaction. Carl Jung once said, "There is nothing more terrifying than facing oneself." And indifference forces them to confront the emptiness inside the very thing they have spent their entire lives running from. In relationships, narcissists often believe they are the emotional center. They want every glance, every reaction, every thought to revolve around them. Even anger or tears serve as fuel to affirm their importance. But when the one they once manipulated no longer reacts, no jealousy, no pain, no tears, only silence, and walking away, the illusion crumbles. Forgetting is like an invisible mirror reflecting the truth. The narcissist is not as grand as they imagined. In the eyes of others, they become nothing more than a faint memory, a closed chapter. And this is the ego injury Jung described. When the persona, the social mask, shatters, the shadow emerges, dragging panic behind it. The paradox is this: narcissists would rather be hated than forgotten. Hatred is still a form of connection, proof they still have influence. But indifference is the end. It leaves no room for negotiation, for power, or for hope of return. It says clearly, you no longer belong in my world, and that is what they are never prepared to face. In the Jungian sense, being forgotten is a call to face the self, but instead of receiving it as a chance to grow, narcissists panic. They scramble for new supply. They chase attention at any cost, sometimes through smear campaigns, sometimes through recycled promises. Yet the harder they try to prove they cannot be forgotten, the more they expose the truth. Their value exists only as long as others still care. This is their harshest sentence. Not revenge, not humiliation, but erasure from memory. When you walk away in peace, when your silence becomes your final affirmation, the narcissist is forced to face their deepest fear. They have no more power, no more centrality, and no place left in your story. Part 8. When love turns into an indictment. In healthy relationships, love is fertile ground for healing, a space where both reflect each other and grow together. But for the narcissist, true love becomes a mirror that exposes their falsehood. Jung once said, "Man does not become whole by avoiding what he does not want to face, but by confronting it." And love, by its patient and authentic nature, becomes an unyielding mirror. It reflects not only the pleasant, but also unmasks deceit, inconsistency, and the void in the narcissist's soul. For them, to love is to possess. But true love requires full presence, vulnerability, and the ability to take responsibility for mistakes. This terrifies the narcissist. They cannot bear the thought of removing the mask the persona they have carefully built to reveal fragility and imperfection. So they turn love into a battlefield where the question, "Do you love me?" is replaced by, "Will you obey me?" In reality, when their partner offers true love, the kind that endures even through hurt, the kind that patiently waits for change, the narcissist does not feel gratitude. On the contrary, they feel threatened. Because that love demands truth, transparency, and companionship. It says, "Be truly present, not just performing." But to the narcissist, these words sound not like love, but like condemnation. That they do not know how to love, do not know sincerity, do not know accountability. According to Jung, this is the direct confrontation with the shadow. When someone loves sincerely, they unintentionally shine light onto the darkness the narcissist has always hidden. And instead of embracing it as an opportunity to grow, the narcissist reacts by attacking, withdrawing, or destroying the relationship. For if they allow real love to touch them, they must face the truth. The ego they have spent their life defending is nothing more than an empty illusion. This is the greatest tragedy. Love, the only force that could redeem and transform them, is the very thing they fear and sabotage. Instead of letting love change them, they turn it into a tool to prove their power. But love will never submit to domination. It only exists where there is equality, presence, and sincerity. And once they destroy that, they lose not just a person, but the only chance at salvation they secretly longed for yet never dared to accept. Part 9. The charming mask and the moment it falls. When they first appear, the narcissist often enters your life like a fresh breeze. They are magnetic, witty, refined, and seem to grasp your most hidden desires. That charm makes many believe they've found a kindred spirit. But as Carl Jung once said, the persona is not the real person, but the mask we wear to adapt to the world. That initial allure is not love, it is a carefully crafted persona designed to impress. In the beginning, that mask works flawlessly. They present themselves as attentive, as a good listener, as someone eager to shower you with warmth. You feel seen and understood. But in reality, it is all strategy. They observe, they learn to mirror your emotions and words so that you feel special. Jung called this projection, when you place your dreams and expectations upon the other, and they skillfully play the role to make it seem real. But no mask can last forever. No facade can withstand the test of time. When small conflicts arise, when daily life demands true presence, when love requires stability and consistency, the mask begins to slip. The sweet words lose their soul. Gestures that once thrilled you repeat like a stale script. You begin to sense something is not real. The most painful part is not when the mask falls, but the realization that you were in love with an illusion. You did not love them, you loved the image they performed. And when the truth is revealed, the loss feels greater than a breakup, because it robs you not only of a relationship, but forces you to face the pain that your love was exploited. In Jungian analysis, this is the moment the shadow rises. Beneath that polished mask lies not a whole soul, but insecurity, emptiness, and fear of exposure. The narcissist cannot maintain their charm indefinitely, because it never came from their true self. It was only a disguise meant to keep you hooked longer. And when the mask finally falls, one truth becomes undeniable. That initial charm was never love. It was a tool to bind you. Yet in that very moment you also receive a gift: clarity. For once you have seen the shadow behind the mask, you can never again believe in the illusion. And that is when their power dissolves while you begin to reclaim yourself. Part 10. When the narcissist sees you happy without them, that is when they truly awaken. Nothing wounds a narcissist more than witnessing you radiant in freedom and happiness they can no longer control. In their world, power exists only as long as you remain dependent, seeking them for validation, for love. But when you walk away and build a fulfilling life on your own, a life that needs nothing from them, it is not only your liberation, it is also the mirror of their deepest failure. For the narcissist, your happiness without them is like a silent sentence, forcing them to face the truth. They are not the center of the universe. They are replaceable. Their power is an illusion. What makes this awakening so excruciating is that it pierces the ego wound they've spent their entire life hiding. They lived in the illusion that you would never escape, that you would crumble without their presence. But the truth is the opposite. The farther you go, the brighter you shine. And it is that very light, the light of peace, confidence, and self-love, that smashes their false defenses. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow will remain until it is brought into the light." For the narcissist, that shadow is the fear of being forgotten, abandoned, and proven ordinary. When you no longer turn back to seek their approval, the darkness in their soul begins to surface. They are forced to feel the emptiness that manipulation once covered. In reality, you do not need revenge nor proof. Your joyful, free, and whole existence is the most powerful response. It affirms that real love never requires control, that true worth is not defined by another's gaze, but by your own heart. Remember this: every time you smile at a new sunrise, every time you live fully without them, you are rewriting your story. And in that story, you are no longer the victim, but the creator, the living proof that self-love is ultimate freedom. Part 11, the final tragedy. Love never returns. There is a truth few dare to face. The narcissist does not truly fear rejection itself. They fear the meaninglessness that rejection exposes. When you walk away, when you no longer react, when you no longer fall into the emotional spirals they create, you cut the only thread that convinced them they still existed in your life. For the narcissist, the ego is not sustained by real love, but by attention, reaction, and even the pain they inflict on others. When all of that disappears, what remains is only a deep void, a place where they are forced to face themselves, and that is the one thing they never want. Carl Jung emphasized that the shadow is the part of ourselves we always avoid, but unless we face and integrate it, we remain forever controlled by it. The narcissist lives entirely inside that shadow, denying it, disguising it with a glamorous mask. But when you withdraw, the mask falls, and their bare shadow is revealed. What pains them most is not merely losing you. It is losing the mirror that reflected back the inflated ego they worked so hard to construct. They once needed you to affirm that they were powerful, valuable, and desirable. But when you choose silence, when you choose peace instead of being dragged into their performance, they lose the audience that kept the illusion alive. And the truth is laid bare. It was all fiction. That is when the ego crisis erupts. They may seek new people, chase new supply, but deep down they know, once they have been seen through, there is no place left to hide. From your perspective, the survivor this moment carries a liberating meaning, because silence and withdrawal are not failures, but quiet victories. They declare that you are no longer their puppet, that you have reclaimed mastery over your own soul. And this extends beyond your relationship with a narcissist. Once you learn to stand firm against manipulation, you also learn to live more truthfully with yourself, to establish healthy boundaries in every relationship, and to recognize your intrinsic worth without needing anyone else's validation. Thus, Part 11 is a reminder. Do not fear when the narcissist tries to erase you from the story they created. The truth is, you are the one who has erased them from the story of your life. And from that moment on, you do not simply walk away, you rise. You step into a stronger, freer, more mature version of yourself. Looking back on the entire journey, you may realize a simple yet profoundly powerful truth. You do not need to return to prove anything to the narcissist. You do not need a belated apology or validation from someone who never truly saw your worth. The very fact that you are still here, still living, still breathing, still smiling, is the most powerful testimony to your strength and dignity. The truth is, the narcissist may try to distort the story, may wear 100 masks to escape reality, but they can never change the fact that you have outgrown them. And outgrown not only in the sense of breaking free, but in the deeper sense of becoming more mature, more lucid, and more powerful. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that is the essence of recovery. You are not defined by the wounds the narcissist inflicted. You are defined by how you rise, how you learn, how you transform pain into strength, and how you rewrite the story of your life. That is the true victory, a victory that is quiet, not boastful, yet resonant deep within the soul. And there will come a time when you realize your silence is the loudest thunder. Choosing peace over chaos, boundaries over abuse, light over darkness, these are the sharpest answers you could ever give them. The narcissist may never admit it, but deep down they know you no longer belong to their spiral, and that is what they can never endure. So, if today you still doubt your own worth, let me remind you, you deserve genuine love, you deserve peace, you deserve a life where your heart is no longer weighed against the scales of manipulation. Do not merely survive, live fully, live fiercely, live as a living testament that darkness can never overshadow the light. And if these words have touched the deepest place in your heart, I invite you to journey with us. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos where you will find truth, healing, and the inner strength you deserve. Every subscription is not just a number, but a step of affirmation to yourself. I choose freedom. I choose peace. I choose to step out of the narcissist's shadow and into my own light. As one. Your journey is still unfolding, but I believe that with every step you will open a new chapter, one where you are no longer defined by your wounds, but by the limitless strength radiating from within you.